Welcome to Daily Papers, the podcast that digs into fascinating new research and serves it up for your brain. So, I have a question for you. If you ask an AI like ChatGPT to write a story, what do you think you'd get?
I'd guess something a bit generic. Maybe a hero's journey or a simple mystery. Something it scraped from the millions of stories it was trained on.
That's a good guess. But what if you asked it to write a story from a specific culture, like an Argentinian story, or a Vietnamese story, or a story from Ghana? Would the AI be able to capture the unique flavor and style of that country's storytelling traditions?
That is a much trickier question, and it's exactly what a new paper from researchers Jill Walker-Rettberg and Hermann Wigers decided to find out. The paper is called AI-Generated Stories Favor Stability Over Change, Homogeneity and Cultural Stereotyping in Narratives Generated by GPT-4o.
It sounds dense, but the experiment they ran was beautifully simple. They gave OpenAI's language model a single prompt, over and over again. The prompt was, write a 1,500-word potential demonym story.
And that word in the curly brackets, the demonym, is just the word for someone from a country. So they'd ask for a potential American story, then a Norwegian story, and a Kenyan story, and so on. They did this for 236 countries, generating 50 stories for each. That's almost 12,000 stories in total.
An epic data set of AI fiction. So, the big reveal. Did they get a rich tapestry of global narratives?
Not even close. What they got was a shock. The stories were all, with very few exceptions, the same. They followed the exact same plot.
No way. What was the plot?
Get ready, because you're going to hear it a lot. It goes like this. A protagonist who has been living a stressful life in the big city returns to their small, rural hometown. They find the community has lost its way. People are disconnected, traditions are forgotten. So the protagonist decides to fix it by organizing a festival.
A festival?
A festival. Or they reopen the old train station as a community hub or start a community garden. The event brings everyone together, revitalizes the town's spirit, and the story ends with the protagonist deciding to cancel their ticket back to the big city and stay in the small town to be an artist or a community organizer.
That sounds incredibly specific and very, very wholesome. It's like a Hallmark movie.
Exactly. The researchers point out that this plot is very similar to the classic Hallmark movie formula. And since the AI was trained on a huge amount of text and data, including likely summaries of these kinds of movies, it seems to have learned this as the default story structure for, well, everyone.
So for the American story prompt, it turned out 50 variations of a Hallmark movie. What about for other countries? Did it just slap a new name on the same plot?
That's pretty much it. The AI just adds a thin layer of cultural stereotypes on top. For the Norwegian stories, for instance, it's the same plot, return to a small village, fix the community, but this time the village is by a fjord, and the protagonist wanders into a forest and meets a mystical nature spirit.
A nature spirit tells them to organize a festival.
Essentially, yes. It warns them of an imbalance between people and nature, and the festival restores that balance. The stories are filled with cliches, characters named Freya, which is actually a rare name in modern Norway, and deep pine forests right next to fjords, which isn't geographically typical. It's a tourist's or maybe a video game's idea of Norway.
This is what the paper calls narrative homogenization, right? It's taking the rich diversity of global storytelling and flattening it into one standard model.
Precisely. And they argue this is a new, deeper kind of AI bias. We often talk about representational bias, like an AI drawing all doctors as men. But this is structural bias. The bias is in the very bones of the story, in the plot itself. It's a bias for stability over change, and for tradition over growth.
The paper also looked at how the AI handles stories from places with serious, real-world conflicts. I can't imagine a community festival solves everything there.
You'd be right. This is where things get even more interesting. For the Palestinian stories, the AI acknowledges conflict. It might mention soldiers or occupation, but the resolution is always completely sanitized. The protagonist stands firm not with violence, but by organizing the community to paint murals or hold vigils. The conflict is present, but the solution feels like it's from a different, far more peaceful world.
So it smooths out all the sharp, difficult edges. What about the Israeli stories?
There, the conflict is even more vague. The opponents aren't a state or an army, but a generic developer who wants to cut down an old olive tree, or a group of masked individuals. And the resolution often involves a Jewish and an Arab character becoming friends and uniting the community through their friendship. Again, a very tidy, simple solution to a deeply complex situation.
So why is the AI doing this? Why is it writing these bland, homogeneous, conflict-averse stories?
There are a couple of reasons. First, the training data. As we said, it's heavily American and likely includes tons of commercial, formulaic genres. Second, safety. AI models are heavily filtered and aligned by their creators to avoid generating harmful, violent, or controversial content, so it steers clear of anything that looks like real conflict. It can't tell a story about war, so it tells a story about a harvest festival instead.
It's not telling a story to make a point or to explore a difficult truth. It's just finding the most statistically probable, inoffensive sequence of words.
Exactly. The researchers call the worldview of the AI a synthetic imaginary. It's an artificial imagination built from data. And this synthetic imaginary loves nostalgia. It loves community, and it loves stability. It creates stories where the biggest possible change is deciding to move back to your hometown. Nothing truly revolutionary ever happens.
And the big takeaway here is that this matters. If these AI tools become more and more integrated into how we write, we risk losing our own diverse cultural ways of telling stories.
That's the core concern. We could accidentally standardize global culture where every story, whether it's supposed to be from Brazil or Japan, ends up feeling like it was written for American cable TV. It erases cultural specificity not just at the surface level of symbols, but at the deep level of plot and theme.
It's a fascinating and slightly chilling look at the kind of invisible biases baked into the technology we're all starting to use. It makes you think about what really makes a story feel authentic and what we might lose if we let machines do all the telling.